Welcome to the first of my videos on tips on traveling in Ireland and Scotland. This one we're going to talk about public transportation. A couple of things of note. First of all, there are several public transportation is actually really good in both of these countries. It's very affordable if you know the ins and outs, and as long as you're planning ahead and you've used it before, and you don't care about seeing off the beaten path things like Tipperary and the Rock of Cashel, you'll actually win the esteem of the people who live in those countries. So, Ireland. There are several bus companies in Ireland. I learned while I was waiting for the bus in Limerick that the one that has the worst reputation is Dublin Coach. Now you'll notice if you look there, there are plenty of options. And Dublin Coach has the most offerings of the locations and the convenience of the places it goes to that you may be interested in. I was standing there talking to a young man named Seamus at the bus station in Limerick, and he told me that Dublin Coach, number one, is usually late, which is funny because he was waiting for a Dublin Coach to go the opposite direction I was, and that typically they will end up in wrecks. Now, he said this because they only run every 2 hours or so, or 1 hour or 2 hours, you can get stuck somewhere for a while. Now, the good news is there's hefty fines for the driver if he's, inconveniences the passengers, and they're fairly affordable. But there are other options like Bus Iron. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Dublin Coach is the least reliable of those options. ScotsRail is actually pretty nice. Or Irish Rail, sorry, is actually pretty nice and more affordable than ScotsRail. We'll get to that in a second. It does, however, even though it's faster, have limited options. So if you're looking at the major cities in Ireland, because most of their cities aren't that big, you can get around to those places by rail. The rail stations are usually as conveniently located to the middle of town as possible. I know the one in Limerick is pretty close. So is the one in Killarney, Cork. I didn't ride the train in Waterford because I wanted to stop because of timing, but there's a nice train station there as well. So, and then the train station in Dublin is actually very close to the brewery. So if that's something you care about, then if you are coming into Dublin, it's basically just outside the train station, and you can't miss it. It smells like a brewery. Once you get into Dublin, there are other options there, but the most important one is the transportation to the airport. So Dublin's a very walkable city. It's not very big in terms of European capitals, so you probably don't need a bus pass to get around unless it's super bad weather. But getting to the airport, there are lots of options. All of them stop at the Customs House Quay, pronounced Quay, spelled Q-U-A-Y. Those are, I think that's Irish for wharf. But all the buses stop there, but there are other places to pick it up. And the place I recommend you pick it up is right next to Dublinia. There is a bus stop there right outside the entrance to the Dublinia Museum. It's not marked, but I did verify, first of all, the night before I left, and then I picked it up there, that there's a Airport Express that stops there. They're all pretty much the same price, between €7.50 and €10 to get there, but that one has the most number of stops. It's there every hour. There are other options, of course, and if you're coming from somewhere else to the airport and you're not already in Dublin, then there are perhaps other options that might serve you better. Then go to Scotland. ScotsRail is nice, but expensive. In Scotland, they have peak and off-peak transportation, and so you'll pay more to use the trains when it's during peak, which is the morning commute. And then in Edinburgh, it also includes the evening commute. So if you're planning on using public transportation in the train system, then plan accordingly. The most affordable option is to go out and back. There's an out and back same-day ticket, and you have to buy it and use it in the same day because the machine will take your ticket when you make the return trip. And that's your most affordable option. So I did a circle, which made it more expensive because I had to pay for every leg. And if I'd gone out and back and then out and back, it actually would have been cheaper. It would have taken more time, which is what I paid the extra money for, is to save time. But for example, I went down to Irvine, and it was £7.50. If I'd done Irvine there and back, it would have been £9.50. So I had to pay $7.50, and then went across on a bus that was relatively cheap, and then had to pay another £9 to go the other leg. So it was fairly more expensive to do the multiple legs. What's really cool is if you do return trips. So what I did is I got there, and I wasn't staying in town in Glasgow, so I took the rail to where I was staying and bought a return ticket, which was like an additional like 50 cents to come back into town that night, and then I just had to pay again to get back. And then when I went into town in the morning, I paid for one in the morning, and then had a return ticket to go back out to where I was staying. So I was able to save a little bit by buying a round trip ticket, but you have to be in the same day, which is interesting. Scotland's buses, at least in Glasgow, are on time. There are lots of options from the airport. They're all about the same price if you're going from Glasgow Airport into the city. Ask the driver what station to get off at, because once you get into the city, it's not obvious where you are. And like I was going, for example, to the other rail station, and so he told me which one to get off at. And from there, I could actually see the rail sign because the train station is inside a shopping center. And both of the train stations in Glasgow are the main one and the eastbound one are both inside of shopping centers, and they're not obvious if you've never been there before. The nice thing about them is they also have free bathrooms. So it's convenient to the downtown. You have a free bathroom no matter where you are in town, because you can simply pop into the train station, use the restroom for free, and then pop back out. It's really rather fascinating. As for Edinburgh has a couple of things you should know about. Number one is the day pass. So I was able to buy a day pass for £5. And the Edinburgh, city zone is actually rather large. It includes Roslin, the famous church from the Da Vinci Code, is inside the city zone. So what I did is when I arrived, I bought a day pass to go to where I was staying from the main train station, then out to where I needed to go back, and then back into town, and then back to where I was staying. So for £5, I rode the bus 4 times in a day, which is really rather affordable. The next day, I bought another one. I went out to Roslin, back into town, rode it around rode it to where I was staying, then back into town somewhere else, then back to the main town, and then back where I was staying. So I got 7 or 8 trips for £5 that day. And there's many buses that run the same routes, so the apps are really good. There's multiple. I mean, they all diverge at some point, but there's heavy redundancy in the downtown area where you're most likely to spend your time. So if you're not looking to walk around a lot, and if you're looking to get out of the Royal Mile, I recommend a bus pass. As for the airport, I recommend the tram. The tram is hated by the people who live there. It doesn't look like it has a lot of options, kind of like the one we have here in Vegas that goes parallel to the strip but not on the strip. I think they only have one tram line, but it was £7.50 to go to the airport. So it's only an additional $2.50 to get into the airport, and they check your ticket when you arrive, and they just waved you through. So and that is the last stop. So it's very easy to know where to go. It's very easy to find because the tram is very obvious. You don't have to figure out what bus it is. And it's cheaper because most of the buses are about £10. So nice. They have nice luggage racks there for your luggage to set in there. And they're definitely planning. It was built with the idea of people will use this to get to the airport. So there are some very economical ways to get around in Scotland and Ireland if you're not renting a car, and if you're not planning on walking everywhere. And I walk a lot. I'm, however, not going to walk from Killarney to Cork. I think it said it would take me over a day to walk there. So, and then people ask me about the cost, because some of the buses in Ireland were very expensive, but they were cheaper than, number one, renting a car, and number two, buying petrol for it, because Ireland, I think, was $6.50 a gallon. And so that's actually pretty expensive. It was over a euro a liter. I think it was €1.66 per liter. So that's over $6.50 a gallon. So petrol is very expensive. Also, if you're driving and you're alone, you don't see much. Now I could have stopped whenever I wanted and changed my route and gone whenever I wanted, but I also got to see the scenery and talk to people along the way and meet people everywhere that I went. And hang out and train the bus stations because it was super rainy. And there were other people there who were in the same boat. So we got to talk, and of course they could tell pretty quickly that I wasn't from there. And I think they were actually really impressed that I was riding their trains and their buses, even though I'm clearly not from either of those countries, notwithstanding that my grandparents are. My mother's side is Irish and my father's side is Scottish. So I recommend public transportation when you go. Those are a couple of things to keep in mind if you're going to Ireland and Scotland. At least for the major cities that I went to. Anyway, travel often and get out there and see the world and spend your money on things that will change your life. Godspeed.